Good morning, everyone. Shall we make a start? Welcome to the Perth Common Good Fund Committee for Wednesday, the 18th of December 2019. Do we have any apologies?
Convener, we have apologies from Councillor Duggan and Councillor Band.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest with regard to the agenda? Councillor Ahern.
Yeah, I've got a non-financial interest in paper 5, item 3.10.
Thank you very much. Fair enough, thank you. Moving on to item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. Are members happy to accept those minutes? Agreed, thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to paper 5 then, applications for financial assistance.
Convener, can I just make a comment before we go on to some of the applications?
Please do.
Yeah, some of these applications are very difficult to make a judgment on just one paragraph. There's two in particular which we'll get to, and I'll ask questions as we get there, where it tells you what they have got in previous years, but don't tell you what they applied for, and we're being asked to give a lower amount than what's been applied for this year, so we don't know the basis of their funding applications in the past. And I know it's been raised, certainly by Councillor Coates in the past, that we need to see a bit more information sometimes on some of the applications to give us a more informed decision. It's very difficult to give it in just one short paragraph.
Okay, thanks for that. Please raise it with the particular issues and we can look at that. Yep, thanks. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, can I just clarify before we go into each of these applications, the remaining budget is obviously less than the total value of the applications. Is it open to us to exceed the budget?
I believe it is, certainly. Mr. Coyne?
Yeah, it does open to the committee to, if they want to exceed the available budget, then they can do so. It just means there'll be less available for carry forward in future years. So.
However, I believe we should be mindful of that in coming to decisions. Thank you. And sorry, I forgot any matters arising from the minutes, but I'm assuming that they're acceptable. There are no matters arising. Thank you. Moving on then, with regard to the small grants, we have an application from Goodleyburn Primary School to take 270 pupils to the pantomime at Perth Theatre. And I'm recommending that we follow the advice of a grant of £700, consistent with criteria 9.6. Are members happy with that? Agreed. Thank you. With regard to the application by the Wednesday tea dancers at 3.2, there's been an application for £315. That is consistent with the criteria at 9.6, and I'm happy to recommend a grant of £315. Can we agree that? Thank you. With regard to the application at 3.3 by Our Ladies Primary School Parent Council, an application has been received for £700. A grant of £700 is consistent with criteria 9.6, and I'm happy to recommend that. Can we agree that? Agreed, thank you. With regard to the friendship group at 3.4, an application for £475 has been received. It's a grant of £210 is consistent with criteria 9.6, and I'm happy to recommend a grant of £210. Can we agree that? Thank you. An application is received from People with a Mission Ministries at 3.5, seeking a grant of £2,000. We are asked to consider a level of a grant for this, and I would suggest to members that a grant of £1,650 is consistent with the grant that we've made previously and allows for inflation since we first made a grant in 2016-17. Councillor Ahern.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Any other comments with regard to that? Can we agree then a grant of £1,650 for people with mission ministries? Agreed, thank you. At 3.6, an application has been received from Headway seeking support for their Christmas pantomime and meal excursion. A grant of £330 is again consistent with criteria 9.6, and I'm happy to recommend a grant of £330. Can we agree that? Agreed, thank you. At 3.7, we have an application from Perth Academy. Perth Academy's Geography Department has been received seeking support for their trip to Iceland in April 2020. A grant of £1,000 is consistent with criteria 9.7, and I'm happy to recommend a grant of £1,000. Can we agree that? Agreed, thank you. At 3.8, an application has been received from Music in Hospitals and Care Scotland seeking £4,050 to deliver their Enriching Lives Through Live Music programme in Perth. The committee is asked to consider the request and determine the level of any grant to be awarded. I'm happy to make a recommendation for a grant of Councillor Ahern.
Yeah, this is one of the questions I've got, is to find out, we granted 1,060 in 2017-18, 1,050 in 16-17. What did they ask for in those years, and on what basis do we give that funding?
Mr. Haxton, can you perhaps address that?
I would need to come back to you on that one. Don't have that detail. I would imagine it would be for something similar. Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Yep.
My understanding too is that the grant awarded was substantially reduced from the total, but I can't remember the exact figures.
That's fine. It's just to find out why it was done that, and we've got, obviously they've asked for 4,050 this year. I just wanted to know the basis we produced it in previous years.
Point taken, and perhaps we can include that in future. I'm happy on this one to make a recommendation for a grant of £1,620, which is 20% of the cost of the 27 sessions of £8,100 and amounts to £3 per person in terms of the number of people taking part. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I think, given the comments that were made earlier about where we are within the budget, and an important thing for me, and I think an important thing for organisations, is having confidence and consistency of funding. So, to be honest, I wouldn't want to go as far as you're suggesting, and I would think an award somewhere in the region of 1,080, which is a slight increase, similar to the increase they've received in previous years, would be more appropriate. So that would be my proposal.
Thank you. I'm happy to go with that. Councillor Rebeck.
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second your proposal for 1,600 odd. It seems a sensible thing to do.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Ahern.
I'm happy to second Councillor Barrett's proposal of 1,080.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments with regard to this proposal, or we'll go to a vote? Okay, thank you. We'll go to a vote on that one. Thank you.
Councillors, we're on item 3.8. We have a motion by Councillor Parrott to award £1,620, seconded by Councillor Rebeck. We have an amendment from Councillor Barrett for £1,080 and seconded by Councillor Ahern. When I call out your name, can you tell me if you're voting for the motion or the amendment? Councillor Ahern.
Amendment.
Councillor Barrett.
Amendment.
Councillor Audrey Coates.
Amendment.
Councillor Harry Coates.
Amendment.
Councillor Eric Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor John Duff.
Amendment.
Councillor Murray Lyle. Motion. Councillor Sheila McCall.
Motion.
Councillor Andrew Pannett.
Motion.
Councillor John Rebeck.
Motion.
Councillor Willie Wilson.
Amendment.
The amendment is carried 6 votes to 5.
Thank you very much for that. Moving on, at 3.9, an application has been received from Perth Creative Community Collaborative seeking a grant of £13,750.56. The group has benefited previously from the fund in 2018-19 with a grant of £1,960, and I'm happy to recommend this year a grant of £2,000, consistent with last year, but allowing for a little inflation. Councillor Wilson.
I'd be happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. Can I just ask for a bit more clarity on the rather large cost for artistic fees? What is that? Can that be explained in more detail, please?
Mr. Haxton.
Yeah, it's essentially based on the hourly rate of $34.58, which is the standard used for that sort of charge.
Yeah, but what are they doing?
Sorry.
Yeah, they're delivering a session at the different locations for the people who are attending. So they're giving them instructions on how to develop their artistic skills and things like that.
It's my experience that musicians are never cheap. We have a recommendation. I'm recommending £2,000. Supported. Agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. At 3.10, an application has been received from ESOL Perth to support their Leading into Work programme. The group are asking for £3,000, and considering this, I'd be happy to make a recommendation that we make a grant of £1,200 to support this, what I can think is a very worthwhile activity. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Convener. You're right, it is a worthwhile activity. I might have been inclined to be more generous, but given that you've proposed, I think, 1,200, I 1,000 question mark on my paper, so I'm happy to second you on that basis of a collegiate approach to it. I think we might have been more generous if we'd had more money in the budget, but the reality is we're in between a rock and a hard place with this. Yep.
Thank you. Other comment, please? Can we agree a figure of £1,200? Thank you. Councillor McCall.
My apologies. As I understand it, ESOL Perth has benefited from some SIF funding that may have been submitted about the same time as this, and I think, if I remember correctly, some of that funding included funding for space of rental of space, for that particular project is different from this one. So I'm just wondering if there's any cross-checking done to make sure that we weren't funding the same thing twice.
The short answer is yes, it's been checked. The SIF project was targeted mainly at children and young people, which needed a separate space.
So this is an additional space over and above that? Yeah. Or is it the same space being used
It may be the same physical space, but it needs a separate booking, as it were, so it's additional cost.
No.
Thank you. Moving on, at 3.11, an application has been received from PCAV's Minority Communities Hub and Perth Chinese Community Association seeking a grant towards the cost of the 2020 Chinese New Year celebrations. The Chinese community have benefited from Common Good Fund to the tune of £3,000 in 2018-19 and the year before that, and I'm happy to recommend a grant of a similar amount of £3,000 this year. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I'm broadly in agreement with yourself. The Chinese New Year celebrations are the biggest of any Chinese community in Scotland and Perth and Kinross. And I think recognising that and the substantial cost of the event, I would be keener to go to £3,500 if that had your agreement.
I suppose the rule of thumb I've applied previously is if they're at the same level for 3 years, then we up it by about 10%. But I'd be certainly happy to go with £3,500. Other comment? Agreed. Can we agree 3,500? Agreed. Thank you. Moving on to the capital grants, we have an application from Maisie Moo Magical Moments to support the installation of outdoor play equipment for children with additional complex needs in the North Inch Play Park. I think that this is a extremely worthwhile project. I'm aware that they've been working closely with other necessary groupings to make sure that this is all done in a proper fashion, and I'm happy to support the grant of £15,000 that is in line with criteria 10.3. Councillor Ahern.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm happy to second that. They've done a lot of work. I was on the SIF panel when we got the application for the funding from SIF. It was extremely worthwhile project, and I understand that from that original application about a year ago, they've actually doing a lot more work, which is, I think, the reason for the extra funding they're looking for. So I'm really happy to second that.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other? Councillor Barrett.
Thanks. I think just to echo my city centre colleagues in support of the commitment and the dedication of the Maisie Moo group to progress the provision of specialist play equipment in our green and public spaces. I think they've done a commendable job starting from a position of some adversity but making real strides, and I think they're only to be commended, and I'd be very happy with the proposal of £15,000.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, and I would just like to echo the comments of my colleagues. This is a tremendous project for the benefit of young people with disabilities, and I heartily support it.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? No. We can agree a recommendation of £15,000 for the Maisie Moo Magical Moments project. Agreed. Thank you. Moving on, at 4.2, St John's Asti Academy is seeking £11,000 of funding for an outdoor classroom for the North Inch Community Campus. It's considered that a grant of £6,500 is consistent with criteria 10.3, and I'm happy to recommend that we make a grant of £6,500. Councillor Roebuck.
Can I ask, given that it's a capital grant, we're not quite as tight on the capital budget as we are on the grants budget, is that correct?
Indeed, we're not. There is money available in the capital budget.
In that case, I'd quite like the committee to consider giving the whole £11,000 for two reasons. I think, A, that outdoor learning, the benefits of outdoor learning are very clear in recent studies. And also the second reason being that the pupils, there was a huge engagement of the pupils in this, and I think their engagement in the process might be undermined if they don't receive all the funding. My understanding is that to fall short of the 11,000 might actually put the project in doubt. So I'd quite like the committee to consider granting the full £11,000.
Councillor Ahern, sorry, then Councillor Drysdale.
Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Rebek's motion for the full amount of 11,000.
Councillor Drysdale.
I'd like to third it, please.
Very well. I'm conscious that the 10.3, our standard ruling, if you like, is 25%. That would be the £6,500, but it is, of course, at our discretion to exceed that. I believe that the capital grant budget can cope with that extra amount. I'm happy, therefore, to go with £11,000. Councillor Wilson.
I I was going to second your 6,500 on the grounds of consistency until your last sentence there, Convener. I had my hand up before you said it, but I think my problem is that I think it may be that there are other sources of finance that would be available to help create the balance for this, and therefore I just urge a note of caution. And I know it's coming up to Christmas, and Councillor Ribbick's much better at being Santa Claus than I am. But I think the recommendation's in line with the criteria, and I think we've got to hear a case for departing from the criteria rather than the no doubt merits of the actual application.
Okay. Councillor Barrett.
If I could say bah humbug to that, convener, and perhaps as a compromise, we could say up to £11,000 if required. You know, so.
Okay. Would those in favour of the £11,000 accept that we make the grant, if you like, of up to £11,000, depending on the requirement?
I would be, Convener, I would be minded to support up to £11,000 if required. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're agreed then that the grant is up to £11,000, subject to proof of the requirement. Thank you very much. The Christmas spirit is alive and well.
And apparently artistic flair too, convener.
Thank you for that, gentlemen and ladies. We will move on to item 6, the financial statement, and I will ask Mr. Coyne to introduce that.
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, financial statement this provides an update on the income and expenditure to the 31st of October and the projected outturn to the 31st of March 2020. The Perth Common Good Fund, so the report is for noting. On the basis of what was reported at the last committee, there's been no changes to the projections, so we remain on track. A deficit of just over £22,000 and the projected Common Good Fund balance at the 31st of March 2020 of 1.493 million. So we're on track to achieve the 1.5. In terms of what we've just approved, we do I've done a quick tot up, and it looks like there's about £8,500 left for the meeting in February for financial assistance support. So the only other thing to point out is at the time the report was prepared, the works at the 2 Northport shop had commenced. It was anticipated they would be completed by the end of December. Unfortunately, it slipped slightly, so it'll be mid-January before it's completed, and that's due to just the tight constraints of the site and phasing the workmen, etc. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Convener. First of all, I'm glad to see the work going on in the Northport. I would say at last, but it's taken a wee while. Do we know if there's any slippage in the take-up of grants this year? Because sometimes there's a grant given, but sometimes, ironically, they're not taken up or not taken up in time for the financial year. So I don't know if there's any slippage. You said there was 8k left in the kitty for February, but do we know if there's of all the grants have been taken up fully?
No, all the grants have not been taken up as yet, but we are trying our best to ensure that that is drawn down. We've had just today a further 2 claims from decisions that were reached in April just being drawn down. So we're doing our best to try and get them out before the end of March.
Thank you.
Can we note the paper? Noted, thank you. Moving on then swiftly to paper 7, the issue of the North Inch Golf Course starters box. Can I ask Mr. Clegg to introduce this paper?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, there's been a long-standing need to upgrade the current starters box on the North Inch. We did a comprehensive trial last spring to look at whether we could move the starters facility to the Artisans Club, which is close to the existing starters box. However, through all the discussions and surveys that we did with the clubs, it was decided that they didn't want to proceed with that. Fortunately, at the same time, we managed to get a VAT refund from the Treasury, as a result of changes in the rules, and that money is now available to us to fund a replacement of the existing starters box on the same site. We're keen to progress that. We've got an outline proposal for that we hope to be able to deliver by the start of the new golf season in April. All things being equal, that's going to be quite a push to get it done, but we're really coming to the Common Good Committee to ask permission to allow us to do that, because the facility is on a common good piece of ground. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you for that, Mr. Clegg. Question, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I noticed in paragraph 2.1 it says that the new facility will be fully serviced. Does that mean that it will have toilet facilities within it?
Yes, we'll be putting an accessible toilet within the facility. There's enough space to do that in the new proposal.
That's really good to hear. Kind of a follow-up question was that, you know, one of the benefits of using the Artisans Club was that there was going to be space for other community engagement type activities, and obviously the staff can't be in two places at the one time. And will the new facility have space to do that sort of community engagement work as well?
Yes, there'll be a sort of common area within the new starters facility as well, so that'll allow golfers to gather at that point and training to be provided.
Councillor Revick.
Comment, please, if that's okay, Convener.
Please do.
I think it's quite important that this committee puts on record its thanks to the golf professional Liam McGill, who's sitting there. I think we should commend them highly. The North Inch Golf Course is a great asset to Perth and Perthshire, actually, and it's a historical one at that. I think the fortunes of the course were sliding a little bit, and the hard work of Mr McGill there has turned it round, and not least the initiatives to get young kids playing golf. I think it's to be commended, and I think the new clubhouse is absolutely required, and I'd like to support the paper.
I would agree entirely, and think that this proposed new building can only improve the asset.
Thank
Councillor
you, Convener. Just on a couple of points. One, I'd like to congratulate officers on their appeal to recover the VAT element, which allows us to go ahead. Like Councillor Rebick, I think the golf course is an important asset for Perth going forward, and it's good to see that we're investing in that asset for the future. And really it sends out a message that unlike colleagues in Dundee, we're supporting public golf courses in Perth.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further comment on this paper? I have to say that I think the proposed replacement looks hugely better than the existing facility. Can we agree the paper? Agreed. Thank you. And moving on to paper 8, the disposal of 1 to 5 High Street, Perth. Can I ask Mr. Little to introduce this paper? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our market analysis over the past 4 or 5 years has consistently indicated that within Perth there is an undersupply of good quality hotel accommodation, particularly to attract the business events and conferences market, and also with the projected increase in tourism, a consequence of the council's cultural tourism investment programme. So at present, it's estimated that there are something like between 120 and 140 capacity for either refurbishment or additional hotel beds in Perth. Perth has actually has the fewest hotel openings of any of the Scottish cities. The last hotel to open here, a new hotel, would be the Premier Inn, which is now kind of 5 or 6 years ago. So it's unusual in the context of the Scottish cities and tourism not to have more interest. So following some intensive marketing by the Invest in Perth team, discussions with hotel operators, we believe we have secured some real interest in opening a new boutique hotel in Perth, and 1 to 5 High Street has been identified as the ideal site for that. We are treating the building as common good, hence the support of this committee is being sought in principle to conclude the marketing exercise in mid-January and bring a report back to this committee and the property subcommittee should there be a real interest, as we fully expect.
Thank you, Mr Littlejohn. Questions? Councillor Ahern.
Thank you very much. I've got several questions. The first question is, how much rent are we receiving at the moment for the organisations that are in the building?
I think it's something around £10,000 for both of them, to my recollection. I need to check that figure, but that's the figure that springs to mind.
Okay, and next question is with regards to the registrars. Obviously, they're going to have to move, and just wonder where they're going to move, and are they going to have similar facilities, especially for facilitating weddings?
Those discussions have started, and Christina is probably in a better place to update the committee on progress in that respect. Christina.
Yeah, Councillor Ahern, we're currently looking at trying to relocate the registrars across to this building, and the suggestion that we have is that we would use the civic lounge for wedding ceremonies and perhaps use the civic hall as well. But again, nothing has been finalised. There is room on the ground floor to have some interview rooms at the back of the building, so we're currently exploring those options.
Okay, and then the last question I've got is regards to an issue we've got with several hotels in the city centre at the moment, and that's parking for people using the hotel. Obviously, there's going to be a parking issue. I can't remember the number of rooms you said that it's possible to go into that if it's a hotel. But what are we going to do with regards to the people that want to going to be parking?
There's no requirement in planning legislation to provide parking spaces for a hotel. It's customer choice. So there will be a few spaces at the back of the building, as you'll recall. But the expectation would be customers using the hotel would use the other public car parks. You'll recall there's limited car parking, for example, at the George Hotel. There's a few spaces behind the Premier Inn. The expectation is customers will park and walk.
Sorry, just a comment that given the scale of the building, it's unlikely. I mean, there will be additional cars there, but it's unlikely there will be a significant number, in my view, in the context of Perth Centre.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Convener. Well, obviously, the building surplus, that's quite clear, and from recent, several of us visit it fairly regularly, and certainly it needs a bit of TLC, I think, is how I would put it. So these arguments are quite clear. But the building is historic both externally and internally, and I just wonder what we propose to have, particularly for the old council chamber, which is both in terms of stained glass, it's hammer beam roof, and other bits and pieces. Some of them are maybe movable to the museum or could be leased out to the new hotel, depending on whether folk want to look at former Lord Provosts of bygone ages and if they're having their meal. But I just wonder how that historic part of it is going to be included in whatever documentation there would be to any successful applicant or applicants. Thank you.
Mr. Littlejohn, can you comment on that?
The interested parties have seen the building. We did some soft market testing really since the beginning of the summer based on conversations we'd had. Everyone who's seen the building is fully aware that it's listed, and therefore the important internal features must be retained, and that would be the subject of a planning and listed building application. The assumption being quite clearly that the old chambers would pretty much be as is and would need to be incorporated into the hotel as some kind of public facility. I mean, I'm speculating here, but bar, restaurant, dining room, function room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Coates, Harry.
Excuse me. Does this mean that this building will then be open on Saturdays to do weddings, which is the most popular place for people, or day for people to get married.
You're talking about this building? Harry, you're talking about this building?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah.
I would assume that if the plan to move the registrar's office into this building would accommodate doing such as it does at the moment. Christina, perhaps you can comment on that.
Yeah, that would be our intention. We currently open 3 to 5 High Street on a Saturday if we have a wedding, or on a Sunday if we have a wedding, and it would be our intention to do the same if we were located in this building.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Lyle.
Comment. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you.
That's great. I just I'd like to put on record my thanks to the Invest in Perth team, who've managed to bring this building to market. And this has been a building that's been surplus to the council for a number of years, and I think the opportunity to market this building is one not to be missed.
Thank you. I would agree. I think it's important that that building is brought back into use as best it can and as quickly as it can be. Thank you. Any other questions? Can we agree the paper? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, and that concludes our business today. Thank you.